call the work session to order. Roll call, please.
Brown. Calhoun. Fournier.
Here.
Krapp.
Here.
McGarity.
Here.
Rick.
Here.
York.
Here.
Okay, we don't need any excusals, so we will move to public participation.
If you just do it.
Well, it's a work session,
Oh,
so we usually don't. We will move to public participation. So if this is the opportunity for the public to address the commission, we ask that you come to the microphone, give us your full name, residential address, and abide by our 3-minute rule. If there's anyone from the public, we invite you to the microphone. Seeing none, we'll move to presentation of real estate services. Mr. Shipman.
Yep, thank you. So as this commission knows, we had on 2 different occasions discussed real estate services for the lakefront property that the water filtration plant sits on. And then, of course, in the meantime, the riverfront property development kind of came into play because we got to the point where we know we're moving City Hall now to 20 South Main. And so the 2 firms that I think everybody agreed on were the most qualified to take the lead on the lakefront. The thought was they could also take the lead on the riverfront. 1 company, 2 projects. Both have their own idiosyncrasies, I guess, but both are somewhat complicated. So I thought it'd be best to let both firms present you this evening. I did send you ahead of time the overview that they were given, plus we've had many conversations, and as well as some of the questions that I wanted to cover as part of their presentation. And then at the end, you'll be able to ask any questions you want. So with us tonight first is CBRE. We have Ann and Joe and Jack with us this evening. Jack Johns, a different Jack Johns. But.
So, I don't know what this is. Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having us. As Greg said, my name is Ann Rahm, and with me is Joe Kemp and Jack Johns. We have a much larger team, but I think the podium would have been a little crowded. So it's just us tonight. And we're here to talk about these 2 properties, but really they're not just parcels of land. They're really economic catalysts for the city of Mount Clemens. And we really do see them as opportunities to further activate the city. And so, but having said that, they also come with very different challenges, very different objectives, and so therefore they're going to need very different approaches on how to monetize or how to activate. So the water plant property, for example, we know you're taking on a whole nother conversion to GLWA's drinking water services, and it comes with a big cost. And so our goal, probably shared goal, is to maximize the proceeds for that property to mitigate some of those costs. And we share, as I said, share in that goal. And then you have the City Hall and Fire Department, and much like many of your colleagues are densifying into these, downtown city centers, which is, quite smart. And you're leaving behind this wonderful, 4.6 acre gem on the riverfront. And so, it could be this transformational, generational project that, is going to be also a success story as part of your master plan. So, before I get too far along, these are some of the questions that Greg had sent ahead of time, so there's a lot to cover here, so I might, if I start talking super fast, it's just because I'm trying to get through some of these. And please stop us at any point if you feel like we're not answering some of your questions all the way, because we'd rather get it all in tonight for you all. But here's our org chart. As I said, my name is Ann Rahm, and I'm part of a group called Public Institutions, and I bring it up just because we're very specific. Our clients are all government bodies, cities, counties, states, port authorities, transit authorities, and we stay in our lane, and we transact on buying salt domes to doing strategic plans for them, such as state of Michigan, state of Minnesota we just did, state of Ohio. So we really cover all transactions for our government clients. There are a lot of other hardworking people behind the scenes that are not shown here, but this whole team, I want you to know, is located in Detroit for the most part. You can see Joe Kemp, he is a land specialist. Jack Johns and Hank Carpenter are multifamily specialists. I mean, this is just to name a few. We have retail folks, so forth. I want to bring up the people on the 3rd row, Ross Huber. He's part of our financial consulting group, and it's really important. He's very key to our development advisory projects, because once we receive these developer proposals, it's time to then really analyze them and make sure that what they're providing us in their pro formas and ROIs and so forth are actually achievable. So that's what Ross and his team does. They put out the pro formas and discounted cash flows that, really test the developers' projections. Max Zabalos with Gridix, great firm that will use our highest and best use studies and our market analysis and things like that, along with your zoning availability and building ordinances, and he'll put together a massing and density study test of what can be built on these properties, which is really important. And we can use those to go into the RFPs when we go out to the developer community. So, and then I don't know if you're familiar with Simon Monahan, great residential firm, and we thought they would be important when we go to look at the evaluations for the water plant information. So, not sure you've transacted with CBRE in the past, but yes, we are the largest commercial real estate firm in the world, and that comes with a lot of good things, especially a deep and wide bench of talent. 500 offices, 140,000 employees, but I also like to point out that we receive these accolades from industry publications and leaders, and they're pretty powerful. We're the most admired real estate company year after year. We're on the top list for diversity, for top company for women in 2025. And then Ethisphere has rated us for the past 12 years as the most ethical company in the nation. So I just bring those up. I think they're super important. I think they speak louder than numbers. So again, this is our PIES. We call it PIES. It's Public Institution Education Solutions. But at any given time, we're probably working on, I would say, 10 to 15, sometimes 20 P3 public-private partnerships at one time. So we really can bring best practices to these projects, which can be, pretty complex. So, and we will also act as your compliance partner, and we take pride in that. From day one, we treat every email, property scorecard, financial analysis as a future public record. So these are some of the property types. As you can see, we do everything from, as I said, salt domes to prisons to city halls, you name it. But I also think it's important to note that, some of these projects really do require creative financing. And many times we're dealing with traditional bond financing that you all are very familiar with, whether it's a GO bond or a lease revenue bond or certificate of participation. But, we also work with ground leases and air rights leases, and we're getting more active with credit tenant lease financing, land swaps, things of that nature. So it's important because we use your credit. We lean on your credit, or I guess Macomb County's AAA credit, which is phenomenal, to mitigate, to reduce your risk and any type of capital outlay. So these are some of the projects. I'm not going to go into them because I know you're going to have this to take home to read. But right now, I would say I'm working on 2 of those right now. That's Champaign-Urbana, Illinois. That's their Mass Transit District Authority, and we're doing a P3 for them. 200 mixed income, mostly affordable, that'll go atop their parking structure that they're expanding. That's a pretty neat project that they're doing right now that we're out with looking for developers. Same thing with Chicago State University, wonderful little university, predominantly Black on the south side of Chicago. And they are in growth mode, and it's wonderful because we're usually selling closed campuses, but these guys are growing. It's a great story. And so we went through a development advisory RFP and secured a developer that is going to build them 500 some doors quickly because they need them, but they have to abide by the 95th Street revitalization plan, much like you all have a master plan. They are weaving all their design concepts and financial impact analysis into this strategic plan. And so it's a true P3 project. So the rest of these are not in Midwest, but we do have one in Mount Lebanon, outside of Pittsburgh, sort of a similar size municipality as Eurozol's. And we're doing, again, affordable housing, retail, mixed-use development on top of the city hall's much-needed new parking structure. And they're going to finance that, but we're out going to get them the developer, and they're all going to work together, put together a neat mixed-use development. So You asked about local market knowledge. Michigan, I think we opened our doors in 1985, and we've been, I think, the #1 real estate firm since in Michigan. In the past 3 years, we've done $6.9 billion in transactions. And I know, big numbers, but it really is important because we offer so many service lines here: project management, property management, move management, appraisals, and then all the expertise that come from the brokerage community, from our brokers, of hotels, which maybe this is a hotel, who knows? Retail, office, all those things, and all that real-time knowledge is so important. It's all housed right here in Michigan. So, do you want me to, any questions at this point? Do you want me to save everything to the end? Save it to the end. Okay, this leads into project capacity and availability. It goes back to CBRE providing us with just incredible resources as a whole. They invest millions of dollars annually into research, which really empowers us as your real estate partner. And they come up with these platforms that give you real-time knowledge, and they're very, very sophisticated. So we take great pride in that. So on this project, you will have a dedicated project team, and it'll be surrounded with senior brokers like these gentlemen. And our team has the capacity and the expertise and the organizational structure to make this all, a great success. So we're going to talk about, we listed a few case studies here, but we're really going to hone in on one that's just more local, and so we can talk more about our approach.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jack Johns. I oversee the multifamily vertical for CBRE for the state of Michigan. I've collaborated with Ann in the past. It's been a wonderful partnership to work with her. Specifically, we did collaborate on this case study. It's not too dissimilar to what you're trying to do here. It was 2 parcels. One was a little more straightforward, which maybe the riverfront is here. One was much more complex. Came with a rigid PUD. Environmental challenges. It's in a floodway, and it has a pretty strict and rigid sustainability requirement. And we were able to successfully solicit 6 bids or RFPs for the property from developers that my team works with on a regular basis. The other more straightforward lot, I think we had 12 or 14 offers in that instance. Still with its challenges, still a very important surface parking lot that the community views as important. We were needing a developer that was willing to replace all or majority of that parking, that public parking, and then go vertical. We were successful in that. We have awarded both sites at this point. So that's just one example of many that we have for case studies where we've worked with municipalities, or we've worked with matching municipalities with the right developer or development team. We always start out with a highest and best use analysis, and there's 4 tests to the highest and best use. First, is it physically possible to put a building on the site or develop the site? Is it legally permissible? Does it fall within the zoning ordinance? Is it financially feasible? Those uses, how many of those uses are actually financially feasible? And then finally, out of those financially feasible uses, what are most maximally productive? My background is in appraising. I've been a broker now for about a decade, a little more. But that has served me well when working with municipalities, trying to guide them and help them understand what the true highest and best use of their land is. And that way we can make the appropriate match with the appropriate developer, if that makes sense. Anything more on that case study?
No,
at this time, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say we were talking about the differences of the 2 properties and how our approach is going to be quite different. So we're taking the water plant property first and sort of going through strengths and challenges and our approach and timeline, and then we'll go to the riverfront, this wonderful piece here, and do the same thing. So starting.
Hey everyone, this is Joe Kemp. I'm a commercial real estate broker. I've been a broker at CB for about 10 years. Specialty in Macomb County, all different types of properties. But the land has been a big focus lately with all the new development in the last 10 years throughout Macomb County and the state. So a little bit of background in construction and development as well. And so when I look at properties or vacant land, I kind of approach it a few different ways. One way is who would buy this, and what could you build here, and how would they think about this property? Now, this property, it has some really strong features with the waterfront frontage. You just don't see that in the market nowadays. People that have waterfront frontage typically, try to maximize, that as an asset. And you're on a main road. You have, a lot of traffic, a lot of visibility, and then with the size and shape, there's a lot of options as far as what kind of development could be here. And then the zoning is also, it could be a challenge, but I kind of see it as a benefit. It's pretty broad zoning, and if you look at the ordinance, there's a lot of different possibilities here. One of the challenges, and one of the reasons why this property is unique, is that obviously the city of Mount Clemens owns this property, but it's not in Mount Clemens. So I think one of the big challenges and one of the hurdles that we can help guide through dealing with communities all the time on any kind of development is, engaging Harrison Township to see what they really want as far as future development there. We know what it's zoned, we know what's able to be built there now, but maybe that doesn't match up with what they want in the future, what they could really see, envision being there. So a couple other challenges with this property that we see just from dealing with buyers and dealing with developers and landlords and contractors is the topography change in the back. There's a pretty steep drop towards the back of the property. That's going to take a lot of effort to get that leveled out. Obviously, it has existing structures there and infrastructure. Something's going to need to be done with that. And so we know a lot of the, whether it's local, regional, or national contractors that can help get quotes and have you understand what needs to be done there for future development. Another interesting thing with this property is, when you're looking at these large pieces, 11 acres, it's a pretty sizable development. And it kind of brings in a different buyer pool. It could be someone local, it could be someone regional, it could be someone national. Sometimes the national groups are willing to pay more because they've done it in another market where they've had success with waterfront frontage, but sometimes their plans are a little bit larger than a local or regional developer or user. So I think, with the neighboring properties there, they might look at some sort of assemblage there to get as much waterfront frontage as they could get to really maximize the site and give you more options and flexibility going forward, where there could be mixed use phases, it can be multi-use properties. The larger the property they can have, the more flexibility they can have in the future is kind of how I envision it, and how I think most developers or buyers would envision that property being utilized. So we could obviously help with that. We can reach out to neighboring properties. I believe that they've reached out to the city at some point as well to talk about that. So we can, help kind of foster that relationship and see where that turns, and we can provide market comps, market standards for how that would work and how that process typically goes, and what price is fair, what timing, what due diligence you would need to do, and how you would approach it. And then moving more towards the development strategy and the timing. Again, this is a unique property, so it's not the typical timing as far as due diligence and go to market. There's a lot of due diligence that we believe would need to be done ahead of time if that's the route you chose. There's a couple different options on how you could approach it. Typically, in a property, you kind of know what you have there. It's a building, it's land, it's apartments, it's retail. You can kind of get comps for what rent would be, what it typically trades for, how old the roofs are, all the important factors. This one is a little bit different, as it would be probably a redevelopment, and a very unique redevelopment. So other than doing your traditional due diligence of a survey, environmental, title work, soil borings, and having that done while you're under due diligence with a buyer, it may be beneficial to look at doing that ahead of time, so that everybody understands what property you have there and what kind of infrastructure's there, and kind of work backwards. So we would obviously help with that, help coordinate contractors, We would know who to call, how much it typically should cost, what kind of the market standard timing is to do these reports, if that's what you decide to do. And then we could also help formulate a marketing campaign. Once the marketing campaign's done, we put it all out online. We send it out to all the brokers in the community, all the developers, anybody who we think would have an interest in this property. And our campaign lists are thousands of contacts locally, regionally, and nationally. So we try to get maximum exposure because that makes the most competitive market, and that gives you the best deal, whether it's price, timing, a lot of different factors that go into it. And then obviously, as we market the property, we can answer questions, help facilitate getting those questions answered through third-party vendors. But also as we get offers and negotiate, it's something that we do every day. We know what's typical and what's normal, and what to watch out for and protect yourself from as far as timing and due diligence and contracts. And we would be there to guide you guys through the process from marketing to getting offers, negotiating, and then closing as well, the title and jumping through all those hurdles, especially with a large property like this. There could be some, it could be a pretty lengthy process for due diligence, with especially working with Harrison Township to make sure you get proper approvals. Any of the buyers who we think would take a look at this are going to be pretty sophisticated, and they're going to want to have all their ducks in a row before they close on a property. So helping facilitate that would be something we do every day, and it's something that I think we could help with on this property as well. So that's pretty much it for the waterfront
Can I ask you
property.
a question?
Yeah.
So you're saying from 10 to 14 months from signing to closing? Or
It depends. It depends on how you do it. Typically on a sale, the seller will have some due diligence. They might have a survey from when they bought the property. They might have environmental from when they bought the property. In this case, and then the buyer would do their own. They would hire their own environmental company, survey company, their own contractor, do physical inspections. So if we do that ahead of time, that shortens the window for some of that, and you can do kind of laddered and tiered due diligence periods where, hey, you have 60 days to do your physical inspection of the property, and then it's only contingent upon, environmental. And then once you have 90 days to environmental, once that's checked, then it's only contingent on municipality approval. So it depends on how you want to structure it. If you do all the due diligence ahead of time and you provide multiple reports to buyers, and we engage Harrison Township and they're on board and ready to go and say, we're going to pull the trigger and you guys can do this or that. They have their own process. I think from the start of the process to it actually closing would be 10 to 14 months based on, what we see as far as approvals, site plan approvals, traffic studies, things like that.
so maybe it's too soon to ask this, but so you would see us going ahead and tearing down the building and,
Maybe not tearing it down, but maybe having an understanding of what that cost would be,
okay,
just so you know what it would be. If a buyer comes along and says, hey, it's going to cost, double what your quote is to tear it down, we can say, hey, we have a quote that's half that price. So sometimes buyers use that as a negotiation tactic.
got it.
So it's good to have all the information so that you can combat and negotiate, whatever their stance is with facts. So.
I'd probably add two things to that, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
One, I would think there's, as you and I were talking about this actually, is that there's going to be a time where you have to strike that balance between prevailing wage. Do you all do it at a prevailing wage level that Joe's alluding to? Or do you let the developer do it in a private sector form so he can do it probably a little more expedited and probably at a cheaper price? So I know you've set aside monies for that, but maybe those monies could be put to work somewhere else while the private developer is tackling that type of thing. And I have another note, I just forgot it.
The only other note I would add to that is I think the more, for this specific site, information that you're able to share with the market on the front end, the more due diligence items like Joe was mentioning, or having a plan for the remediation of the water plant, is going to widen and deepen the buyer pool. I think you're going to get more competition, more people looking at it, the more certainty is around what the site truly is and what it can become through, the township's zoning.
And early engagement with Harrison Township.
And early engagement with Harrison Township, absolutely. I think that's important because I've done so many of these urban infill sites or just did kind of infill sites. Not a ton on the water, but have done enough that I can tell you that lengthens the process, the less certainty you have around it, or not. If it was just a clean, flat site that was already tore down all the buildings and we knew what we had, you had an environmental report ready to go, and it was balanced, that's a much easier process to run than having a lot of uncertainty around the site, if that makes sense to you.
It seems like Harrison, I wouldn't have been surprised if they were here. They should have some interest in what we do with this. They should have a lot of interest in what we're going to do with this property. And
I would imagine they will at some point.
Yeah.
Want to play the cards too soon.
Riverfront.
You ready to go?
Yeah, sure. So this is a wonderful piece of property, obviously, within the kind of urban core of the city of Mount Clemens. It's a good size piece too, 4.6. I have a couple quick questions before I really dive into everything. I see there's a marina that is adjacent to the property. Is that a public marina currently?
When you say marina,
Like I saw there was like little boat slips out there.
the docks and stuff
Yeah, the
out there.
docks and
I mean,
stuff.
that's just open to the public to use. We
And they use the public parking for that currently,
we
correct?
could, yeah.
Would that be a requirement for a developer as part of the RFP process to keep that marina open to and provide public parking?
I think that's part of the discussion and why somebody needs to come in and take the lead and see the direction the commission wants to take it.
And I think those are things that are really going to be important to contemplate. I see this as being a RFP process that we would go out to the development community. We're talking national developers that would be coming in to look at this piece, most likely, probably some local and some regional that would definitely have an interest, but I do think it has more of a national feel to it. Depending on what you allow to be there, I can see it being mixed use, so quasi-dense retail, maybe a hotel with some multifamily component to it. It's got a lot of good qualities going for it. I think, as you know, it's in the urban core, it's on the water. That's a rare gem to come across. I get really excited when I think about this piece of property. We would do a comprehensive highest and best use analysis on this, a very deep dive on what would be the most maximally productive use of the site, because it is, a rare site. You don't see a lot of urban infill riverfront sites come on the market. Evaluate multiple redevelopment scenarios, including, do we keep the marina open? Is it a public marina? Is it private to the residents? If that's what it becomes, is it something that could be used as a community benefit? I think yes. My quick opinion on that, we would evaluate residential, hospitality, retail, public and private partnership opportunities. If you guys wanted to still have some sort of stake in the game here, because obviously a hotel has future revenue growth. Maybe there's a strike of balance between the price on the site and having stake in the game or equity in the new development that creates more revenue for the city. This is a pretty similar development strategy as the other one. We would thoroughly plan, model, and structure the project to ensure it's market visible and set up for success. Our team uses a campaign launcher called Deal Flow. It's proprietary to CBRE. Once we did all our highest and best use analysis and we're ready to go to market, we would provide materials for you to review, marketing materials, and then we would launch that nationally to probably about 15,000 developers. And it would be somewhat international too. We would see groups out of Canada for sure step up to the plate, given its proximity to Canada. From there, we would launch it, people would show interest. We have a lot of outbound, we have a team of 5, so we have a lot of outbound calls that we would make to the various developers showing interest in it. We're not going to hit all 15,000 on the list, but the ones that have downloaded the docs and have shown interest would get a personal phone call, follow-up email. As time went on, we would do a call for offers or a call for request for proposals for this property. And Ann, if you want to talk about the RFP process at all, we would run through all the frequently asked questions, do a buyer questionnaire with your approval and oversight, and narrow it down to the top 2 to 5 developers. And from there, with your input and our guidance, select the top 2, put them in a best and final scenario where they're kind of bidding against each other. And then select the best one after we did a formal interview of them. We vet them along the way. So typically we've done business with them in the past. We know they're capable, that they have the team to pull it off. They're financially able to, I don't know.
He's just trying to get the noise down, I think.
You want me to dig into that
Yeah.
for a second, just like you said? So that RFP will sort of mirror, if you would like, your typical RFP procurement process. We could be as strict or as flexible as you would like to be. We in our government world, of course, do very strict, very defined, Q&A periods, code of silence, pre-bid conferences, and we're usually out, I would say something like this, that we're going to score them on, and we'll have a scoring system if you would like to, as part of the evaluation criteria. And, how strong is the developer, what their, typical things, their experiences, how much community impact is there, sustainability. I mean, really, we'll ask for your input from your evaluation committee on what you want to see in there, what the financial returns would be to the city. That would be an important one. Is there a DBE, MBW, MBE requirement that you will need from subcontractors? All those things that will be part of our whole evaluation criteria. And that's the scoring system. But again, we'll go as strict or deep as you would like, all would like. So I would imagine, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
We'll probably be out for about 60 to 90 days with that, and they come back with their conceptual plans, their pro formas, and they've checked all the boxes that we have. They agree upon fees that are involved and things of that nature. And then, as Jack said, we go into, best and final and vetting process. And that's where it gets really important. We collect all these proposals, and it's, apples, oranges, squirrels, and elephants, and you have to make sure they all come together and start looking more similar.
And they've checked all the boxes that we have set for them to check, so they've met the criteria.
Yeah, exactly. And so that whole process of homogenizing those proposals is super important. And you might change your mind all along the way. You might say, you know what, we were thinking we were going to do a ground lease. Now we're not. We're going to do a parking structure, an air rights lease up. You don't know yet. Maybe you do, but you might not know yet what you want. And so it's a really, important. We want the developers to get creative. Yeah, the developer.
Yeah.
We want them to come with their ideas.
And the market feedback will be really important and somewhat nuanced. We're going to get, like to Ann's point, a lot of different proposals. We want to homogenize those the best we can. But it might open up our eyes to something we hadn't thought about yet, that a developer comes in. And I think that's what a team like CBRE and a firm like our firm brings, is that breadth and depth of the marketplace. We deal with this on a regular basis and have had a lot of success working with municipalities in the past.
Can you give me an example of what kind of community engagement or community input, public input that you've had with your with the firm in these projects?
Sure. I mean, we hold charrettes. We will do, so maybe one step before a pre-bid conference, we will go out to the community and hold a community engagement event, really following your lead too. I mean, we never want to go too far that you don't want us to, but it's really important to us. And I'll probably just talk about it now. We're all about early community engagement, right? We don't want to make the big decisions and then go to the community, because that never works, ever works. So we really want the community to feel involved. If they want a river walk right down this road, well, we'll put that in the RFP, and that's part of the development agreement. So all those things, we want the community, this is as Jack's saying, this is a gem, and the community wants to trust you and everybody you're hiring that they are going to have their interests heard. And that's it's really important, or else it's not going to be a success. So, early on engagement.
I
That's
think it would be an early engagement open house, probably a charrette or two with people coming in and giving their ideas and thoughts to what they would like to see, and let it kind of bubble up to the surface, and that'll help us too with our questions for the developers. I think that's important. I was moving on to transaction execution, but after we select somebody and we're there, we're going to walk you guys through it and guide you through the process of getting through a development agreement. If it's a purchase agreement or a land lease or an air rights type deal, we have the expertise to help and guide you of what's market and what's not market. And developers are going to ask for things that aren't always market. If they can get a mile, they're going to take a mile. If we can keep it closer to the inch, that's what we want to do. So we would take you. Go ahead.
It's also an important time. We're doing tag teams here. It's also an important point here when we do get the proposals. That's when we bring the Ross Hubers of our company in, who are the financial consulting group, and they, because developers can put any type of pro forma out there, and you want to know as a city what your return is going to be if you want any long-term return. Maybe you're just sort of like.
Or what's it going to do to our tax base?
Yes.
Primarily, if this is a fee simple transaction, we all decide it's the best thing to do. How does that best impact our tax base? Where are we going to get our best tax dollars while also being a community benefit and having the community engagement?
Yeah, exactly right.
Sure.
The financial consulting group really does play out those discounted cash flows as long as you want, and we'll keep massaging those models until you're happy and what's the best structure for you all.
And we back check everything, so we'll do our own rent comps, our own. What's the ADR if it's, to use a hotel as an example, not saying that this was going to be, but we're going to find out what the ADR is, the average daily rates, the average occupancies. We're going to understand the market. We're going to underwrite it to see if they're in line with market or if they're just kind of full of fluff, and that's what Ross helps us do. But we're going to collect all that data on your behalf and feed it to our people at the financial services group.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think it's a little. We're just sort of diving deeper into what we were talking about, how we go about our engagement process, and it's we have so many avenues that we can talk about, but I think we've really covered most of it. I mean, our database alone, our public institutions database is over. I think we have 35,000 names of investors and developers that we reach out to in our P3 projects. And as I said, we're out with 10 or 15 complex P3s on a daily, at any given time. So we know who, the appetites are changing constantly of, what they need to get their return on their investments. And so it's important, our worlds merge, and so we know what the appetites are on any given day.
Yeah.
So, you could have one developer that was.
What's a P3?
Sorry?
What do you mean by a P3?
Private-public partnership.
Oh, P3.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I'm sorry. So you're really, that's the beauty of a P3. Your goal is to push the risk onto the developer,
Yep.
right? You want them to come with all the equity, all the capital, all their ideas, and then you all benefit from wonderful community impact and engagement and things like that. You might all want to see a park out there. A certain part of the 4.6 acres you might want green space, and that would be dictated in the RFP. So right now, you're going to dictate what you want. But it would have to be within reason, so a developer can get enough return.
And we would help you with that.
Yeah,
making sure
absolutely.
that it's still financially feasible and get to that most maximally productive use. Or
but now
uses.
it's the time, right? So
Right.
you've got this great master plan. Now's the time to make sure that this is part of it. So, and they know that.
We've often talked about saving some of that as a public space for
Sure.
park types and
Yeah.
for the residents.
Yeah, which
I-
is very common these days. I mean, everybody really needs green
That's
space.
Yeah.
It's very important.
And it probably should remain that, honestly, going forward, is public space in the way. Yeah. This is more just sort of the same thing, their negotiation strategy. I mean, we're gonna, again, guide you and with your input, come to what's the best deal structure. Is it a true joint venture? Is it a straight out sale? Is it a land lease? Is it an air rights deal? And we're gonna help you guys secure the best deal through that, through our expertise and our numerous transactions. We wanna negotiate, like, again, definitive agreements, purchase and sale agreements, making sure that we have the right due diligence periods, and as to Joe Kemp's point, that aren't outside of market, that developers or buyers aren't coming back and just asking for more time. So we want to make sure we give them enough time, but not so much that we just, I'm a firm believer, I've been doing this long enough, that time kills all deals. So we want to hold their feet to the fire and make sure that they're actually performing and doing what they're saying they're going to do per the contract. We'll manage that entire process for you. We want to always, support city leadership and what your guys' initiatives are. This is your land. This is an important, very important thing that's taking place here at both pieces. So we want to make sure that we're listening with both ears and only speaking with one mouth. I think that's why God gave it to us that way. But implementing those things along the way, whether it's through the RFP process or just the sale process and purchasing or selling the fee simple interest of, say, the waterfront property. And then ultimately, everybody wants to get to a successful closing, right? We're going to help you once we get through the due diligence period, actually get through the closing checklist and get, title commitment completely done through the due diligence process and onto the closing period. And so ultimately a successful closing.
And ironclad development agreement. That's the key.
I noticed you don't give us a time frame on this one.
Sorry about that.
I just figured that wasn't feasible.
I would say to get to a development agreement, not to closing, it would be something like this. I would say 14 to 16.
Yeah, I was going to say 12 to 18.
12 to 18, so. Yeah.
To get to a development agreement after we've run the process.
I mean, it really comes down to really how much zoning variations you need. Same thing goes for the water plant. If somebody comes in and says, I want to build pickleball courts and a Ferris wheel, they're going to have to get they're going to need zoning variances. And so that's when the time comes in. It's not on the developer, it's really on the municipalities.
I can say for our most recent, the 2-property case study I was speaking about earlier in Ann Arbor, it took us about 12, 14 months to get through Klein Lot, right? Yeah.
I would say.
Mm-hmm. It was we're going to get that done at the next meeting, and it was about a year ago now. Yeah.
Excellent.
So, are you all ready for questions?
Sure. Yeah. The rest is.
So I hear you all loud and clear when you say that riverfront properties of this size and nature don't come up very often. And I'm sure we all know that, from our own limited perspective because we're not in the business. But I can just imagine what the competition process for RFPs is going to be like for this because they don't come up very often. I mean, I recently sold a residential property in Highland Park and got calls internationally.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that I know you're going to have to do strategic marketing based on what we decide that we want to do with this property within our own decision-making process in terms of what we would like to see done. But even with strategic marketing, how long of a process do you think just the proposal process would be where we're just entertaining these RFPs? Because I imagine that it would be endless in terms of the number of people or companies that would be interested in a riverfront property that doesn't come up very often.
We would set a deadline.
You would set a deadline?
Yeah.
Okay, so the deadline what would the time span be like?
I would want to say we want, like Ann was saying, 60 to 90 days, somewhere in there. My campaigns that we run for just market rate multifamily, they last about 6 weeks.
That's for as-built.
That's
Stabilized.
Stabilized, off the shelf, market rate multifamily transaction. This is a little bit more robust and a little bit more complicated, so I want to maybe double that and get it the right exposure to the market. But we also, to your point, it can become endless, and we have to set a deadline. And that's when we find out who's the real players are and who aren't.
Yeah, and in the RFP, we will spell out a schedule. RFP issuance date, much like any type of your procurement,
Yep.
right? You have RFP issuance date, Q&A period. How do you submit your Q&A? Where is the addendum that's showing the Q&A going to be posted? We'll still follow all that type of procurement regimen. And then it will be Q&A pre-bid conference and then proposal due date. So they will know the second they get their RFP when the proposals are due.
And typically we find the people that are engaged are going to follow that, and the ones that are just sort of jokesters are going to try to.
Right, you got to weed them out.
We would run it as a rigid
Weed 'em out.
process.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
got a
that's how we
follow-up
weed 'em out.
question. Thank
Exactly.
you.
Yeah.
Got a quick follow-up question. Because this is a unique real estate venture, I'm wondering if we could look nationally at riverfront development, or have we done that? Because I didn't see a lot of examples. I would really like to see examples of what takes place in a similar municipality in terms of the opportunities that are presented and what the municipalities decide to do with the riverfronts, and then the viability a year or two later in terms of how much capital has been generated, what has been the response in terms of market to it. Is that at all possible to get that through you guys, or should we do
We
it?
could do that research, that homework.
Yeah, I think it's something worth looking
And
at.
there's definitely
Assuming those exist, and hopefully they do, those types of
South-
scenarios.
South
But
Bend,
yeah,
Indiana.
those are things
Yeah.
that.
And we have them.
Yeah.
Sorry, my apologies. We have, City of Miami in Florida as a client of ours, but it's a pretty big scale. They did a land swap with the Adler Group, which is a big developer down there. It's been a wonderful, wonderful project. So City Hall now has this beautiful new City Hall, and the Adler Group now has this fantastic mixed-use residential development right on the river. So, happy to share any of those metrics and things like that. And then we'll look for there's certain Great Lakes projects that have been happening, Lorraine, Michigan City, things like that have been on the water. They've been pretty complicated dealing with Republic Steel, US Steel, things like that. But let us dig into a little bit more, and I probably should have added those in there. But
Thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
Sure.
Anything else? You want to look at the fee structure and compensation?
Yeah.
We
Sure.
did get to that one.
Again, this is what we were proposing based on breaking it up into two different approaches, right? So we have the water plant property. As of right now, we foresee, unless, we have a lot to learn, right? That we need to hear more from you all, what your hot topics are and buttons are. And so this would be a fee simple sale, we would assume, because we really don't see you keeping long-term ownership, equity, control, because it's in Harrison Township, so forth, right? So based upon, if we were the sole broker and we sold it with someone without a buyer's broker, it would be a 5% fee that the city would pay CBRE. If a buyer's broker were involved, it would be 6%, and we would give the buyer broker their share. So, and then we would get paid that at the time of closing, when the actual the transfer of the property. Any questions on that one? Okay, so the riverfront redevelopment opportunity, we really do consider this more like a P3 type project, a true redevelopment play. And so we would be acting as your developer advisor, running an RFP process. And how we typically do that is we do charge a monthly fee, because we are enlisting the Gritics of the world. We're paying them, monies for massing and density studies. We're paying, there's monies involved that we pay. And so the city would pay us a monthly retainer of $10,000. And then upon a successful execution where we find the developer that suits your fancy, pick the developer, we get through the pre-development agreement, and we execute upon a development agreement, we get paid a success fee by the developer, not by you.
Yep.
And at that time, we rebate you 50% of the monthly retainer that you paid us. So your out-of-pocket is 50% of the monthly retainer over the 12, 18 months.
So it's a
Maybe I was
developer
writing too
paid
fast.
success fee.
Can you just go back? So it's 10,000, did you say, a month?
$10,000
For the entire project, or?
until a development agreement is executed.
Okay.
Yep.
And then once that development agreement is executed, we would rebate you 50% of those monthly payments.
So in
Once the
other words,
transaction's
if you
complete.
don't go through with it and get it, then you don't get your 50% back.
Correct. That is correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So no fee when it's just the 10,000 a month? Or is there a fee at the end then?
The fee at the end is paid by the developer,
Okay.
the success fee.
And we were looking at.
We would include that as part of the process.
Yep.
As the RFP.
And I think there's a success. Sure.
Yeah, and that's on a cumulative scale.
Just curious, if you don't mind, what is a likely success fee? What does that look like? I've never,
So,
is it a percentage of what?
yeah, it's right there on the,
Oh, okay,
on the
I'm
table, and I'm sorry, you
sorry.
probably don't have it right in front of you.
Okay.
But it's, so say it's a $30 million project.
Okay, I see it now.
It's, 3.5% of the first 10 million, and then,
Okay, I got it.
It's
Thank
tiered structure.
yeah.
Okay.
And so what that does also is if the parcel were bifurcated and you did something completely different on 2 acres and then you went to 1.5 acres of something else, we're somewhat protected because it's, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So if you have a hotel developer that builds on one piece and it's a $20 million hotel, we're getting paid for that, and then, so.
Makes sense. I have a bit of a, I don't know, off the wall question. I'm not sure if I can even really ask it right. So, would you be working with the developers to identify potential government funding resources to assist with paying to broaden the pool of potential developers should the property be eligible for government funding from outside the city government, like, state and federal funding?
There's going to be developers. I think there's 2 ways to look at that. I think the short answer is yes, because it probably does widen and deepen the pool, and developers love public incentives. So,
And these days, they
That we know.
but having said that, we're probably going to see them in their proposals back to you and to us that they're going to be seeking those. They're going to probably tell you that.
Okay.
We're going to be seeking a brownfield TIF. We're going to be seeking, a new enterprise zone or something, whatever it could be.
A pilot.
We might be asking you for
Favorite acronym.
that's everybody's favorite
Debbie's
acronym.
favorite.
It's the flavor of the month.
So the more we can identify up front, the better. It helps them and it helps you. So
Yes.
that would be great. What we'd like to do up front as best as we can is identify that potential financing gap that is going to happen. If market rents cannot support that, we want to know that ahead of time. We want to know, we all do,
Yeah.
just so we're not shocked by a developer coming in and saying, we don't have to tell them what we think the gap is, but we should probably know.
Yeah, and then they're going to shore up that gap through public incentives.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just becomes
we
part
have
of
an
the capital
incentive-
stack.
Sorry. Yeah, we have an incentives group within CBRE that can help them too. From their perspective, we put the walls on. And we can help them. I mean, that's a big part of what we do too, to sit down with the municipalities and really make sure everybody's working together on, on getting to the cross finish line, so. Yeah, good question.
Anybody else got any?
That was very comprehensive.
Yeah, it's a lot to.
We'll have to process.
Gotta read this.
Well, we're
Yeah.
happy to answer any follow-up questions. Great question. We will get back to you on
Back to you
that.
on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Appreciate it.
Is there anything else you can think of right now while you have us?
No, and I would suggest that, for all the commissioners that we, if we do have follow-up questions, we'll direct them to Greg, because he has all of your contact info, and have him direct it. And then that way, if one commissioner asks the question, we all get the benefit of the information, right?
Okay.
Great.
Thank you all very
Thank you.
much.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Appreciate
Thanks so
that.
much.
Very nice.
Exciting
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very.
We are excited. All right. Well, thank you. Welcome. We're really excited to have Plant Moran Real Point with us. So.
Yeah, so we got Tori, Andy, Doug, and Todd, and I know some interns that I just met. So, Tori, it looks like you're going to lead this off for us. So
I am going to lead, and we have kind of our full team here. We're all going to take turns, if that's okay. First of all, thank you for having us. Thank you for having us right before your dinner, too. We'll be sure to hopefully keep this relatively exciting as we walk through it. I also feel free to interrupt us and ask questions along the way. We get really, really excited about real estate sometimes, and we'll just start babbling about all the technical stuff. So again, just feel free to interrupt us, and happy to make this a little bit more conversational as well. Also, thank you for having wonderful air conditioning in here. It's really making a difference in our lives right now. So thank you for that. So a little bit of run a show. We're going to just walk through a little bit of who we are, a little bit of who our team is. Candidly, we'd like to just kind of spend most of the time on approach and understanding some of the challenges and talking through how we want to work alongside you guys on this project more than anything. So we're going to try to get to the meat of it relatively quickly. But first, just want to talk a little bit about some of our backgrounds. I'm Tori Mannix. I'm a partner with Plant Moran Real Point. Started my career with the firm about 14 years ago. I lead our real estate consulting practice, which I like to just say is kind of a fancy term for problem solving for real estate. So I spend a lot of my time, I'd say about 50% of my time, on kind of the strategic upfront, what to do with real estate, why you should do it that way, and how it aligns with the client's goals, basically. The other half is then saying, okay, great, we figured that out, we aligned on it, let's go execute, whether it's development or disposition or whatever it ends up being. I work across pretty much every industry, and I'm really fortunate to get to work on a lot of really cool projects, especially here in Michigan as well. I'm born and raised in Michigan. Andy?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Thank you again for having us. I'm Andy Fountain. I've been with Real Point for just over a decade. Newly minted partner. This is like week number 2, so very excited about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I lead the government practice for the firm. So anything federal, state, local typically flows through me in some way, shape, or form. So we're here in the city of Mount Clemens, a local unit of government, and we're excited about the opportunity to assist you with these initiatives. I'm going to let Doug go ahead and introduce himself.
Thank you.
I'm in the way. So.
Doug Smith, great to be here with you. I have the pleasure of working for Ms. Mannix in the consulting department, and it really is a pleasure working with both she and Andy. In brief, my background is last 10 years with Plant Moran. Prior to that, private development. Worked for a regional developer and a national developer that did housing, senior housing, hospitality, some office as well. And what I bring really to this is a lot of transaction experience across the country. The rest of the group has experience in that as well. But I'm looking forward to talking to you about our process and why we think it works and how we think it'll help you guys ultimately with the best outcome possible for both these properties. So thank you.
Good evening, Todd Fenton. I bring a little bit of a different perspective to the team. I'm in my 3rd year at Plant Moran, but prior to that, about 20 years in the public sector. So I was an economic developer in Wayne County, and then we'll get into a case study in Royal Oak, but I spent 10 years in Royal Oak, first as their economic development director, who spearheaded the transformation of their downtown, and then ended my tenure there as their interim city manager. Really wanted to do real estate on the private side, so that's why I joined Plant Moran. And a lot of my background working with the community and stakeholder engagement, those are skills that I bring to the table here if we're lucky to be able to work with the city of Mount Clemens. So thank you. Jason, I'm going to turn it over to our interns. You can go up to the podium.
Yeah, come up, yeah.
This is all part of the learning experience. Podium doesn't bite.
Yeah.
That's my first time. All right. Hi, guys. I'm Jason. I'm a recent Michigan State graduate. I was a finance major, and it's my first time ever doing real estate, so it's a good experience for me. And I'm originally from Rochester, Michigan, but I have close ties to the city. My mom was a practicing attorney right over there at the courthouse for more than 20 years. And I also get my haircuts to this day down at Vision's Barbershop right over there. So
Excellent.
I had to let that be known. But thank you guys for having us.
We appreciate it.
These are local market knowledge.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Hi guys, my name is Bridget Cullen. I am about to be a senior at the University of Michigan and I'm studying urban technology and I'm excited to be here.
Hi all, my name is Ashley Cronenberg. I'm also going into my senior year at the University of Michigan and I'm studying organizational studies with a concentration in real estate. And I'm also excited to be here.
We did not feed them before we showed up, so we probably should have done that. Thank you for letting us go through our backgrounds and for letting our interns be a sponge today as well. We appreciate it. We brought a pretty full team here, as you can kind of tell, with a kind of a diverse background of folks. We also have 150 other people within our group, and what makes us really, really, really unique is even if you kind of look at the four of us and where we came from, every single person has a very different background. So we have folks that used to be practicing attorneys that said, I don't want to do this anymore. They're working with us now. We have former city managers. We have people that were on private side development. We have construction, architect folks. And when you kind of pull all that together, you'll see why that makes a really big difference when we go to talk about our approach here and having all these different expertise and people as well. About 70 of those folks being in Southfield, Michigan, and the rest being kind of scattered around at other locations as well. So I think a lot of you know we are very, very much tied to the tried and trusted Plant Moran. We are an affiliated entity officially of Plant Moran, but what that means is we get kind of the power of the firm and a really long history of the firm, 100 years in business. I think 30 years in a row now on kind of the Fortune 100 greatest places to work. And we really benefit from that and love being a part of Plant Moran. On the flip side, our group has had a ton of growth over the last 30 years is what we kind of called a startup mentality as part of this big firm of Plant Moran. And our 150 folks, we solely concentrate on real estate. What that means is a lot different depending on who you are, but that is our practice. And if you kind of look at what we do on a daily basis, we've had $7 billion of public-private partnerships that we've worked on under advisory, either on the public side or on the private side. So we've kind of scaled on both sides. We'll talk about why that's important as well. We have $9 billion in active construction projects that we are overseeing as the owner's rep. We've had many millions of square feet in transactions over the last 5 years across pretty much every asset class. And we also do a lot of things in terms of incentives and other parts that go into doing a successful real estate development or just advising on a specific real estate development as well. So lucky to be a part of this firm, and it's been really, really cool to see our growth over the last 30 years as we've kind of walked through a lot of different walks of life, but the 150 folks that we have is a really powerful group as well. Will Andy take over for a minute here?
Thank you, Tori. So, talking a little bit about maybe a little bit more to the point that Tori made a few moments ago. We have a lot of folks with a lot of different, diversity of experience, but all with that focal point of some connection into real estate and capital development. One of the, I'll say, like the strategic advantage of RealPoint is that we are, we're full service real estate consulting. What does that actually mean? Well, in many instances, working with other clients, they'll engage someone to do a market study, and then they'll engage someone else to maybe do a space programming exercise, and then they'll hire another professional service group. The advantage of working with PMR is that we can have all those, all that expertise in one house. So what does that mean to you? It means that we create a holistic and synergistic approach with all the resources that we talked about previously. Like we said, we have a lot of diversity in our experience. So from our perspective, the value that we deliver is really in that synergy, not only amongst ourselves, but with our clients under one roof. In lieu of having to coordinate different professional services to ultimately deliver whatever your outcome or what your recommendation is going to be. We can help you develop that in-house. And then if appropriate, we can help you engage others that may be needed in the process, but still helping and assisting you in the oversight and of those groups. So that's really, I would say, like our main differentiator. What I would say is like what the advantages that we bring to the table as PMR with local units of government and other clients alike.
And just to tack onto that, just to give you a kind of live example of some of this too. We're not a brokerage shop that maybe does some consulting. We're not a consulting group that maybe does brokerage. We're not an owner's rep that maybe does transactions. All three of those pillars stand up our entire practice, and that really is, if you look at the group that we have here, that is how we go to market, because we believe that this integrated approach delivers a better outcome. So when you're talking about looking at, let's say, this property, and we say, hey, we need to understand from a development perspective what they would want to build here and how they're going to do it. I call up our guy that does incentives and I say, if you're a developer, what type of incentives are you going to want to be able to do this deal? Then I go down the hall to Andy and I say, what do you think construction costs are right now to do a development on this property? And so that kind of gives you the sense of all these different pieces, and when you plug all those holes together, that expertise, that is like the integrated advantage that we're talking about here too.
Can we have you guys come to the microphone when
I'm sorry.
only because the camera won't pick you up?
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
We don't need to repeat it.
Yeah, we can hear you, but the camera can't. So yeah, sorry about that.
No problem. We brought a couple case studies just mainly for reference, but what's in front of the city of Mount Clemens is similar to other clients that we've assisted over the last 30 years. Some of them actually right across the street with the county. Todd mentioned the city of Royal Oak, which I think he'll get into a little bit more specifically, so I won't steal his thunder. But city of Novi, we're working with them right now on a pretty substantial public safety initiative. We've assisted the MEDC with several mega sites across the state. We worked in Marshall, we worked up in Shiawassee, but all of these things that we've helped other groups with, they kind of fit inside of that the same box that we feel the city of Mount Clemens is facing with these two different locations. So if you have questions about any of these, if you like reference information about any of them, we're happy to pass that along. But just wanted to share that we've done this before. We've been doing it for 30 years, and we've had a lot of success with our clients, helping them with similar opportunities. Doug?
Thank you. So one of the questions you had was about our approach or methodology for a project like this. And it's fairly simple but comprehensive. It's an approach that we've used successfully both here locally and across the country. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then Todd and I are going to get into some detail as to how it applies to the particular sites that you're right now wrestling with and trying to determine how to potentially dispossess yourselves of or do some economic development on. So really 3 steps here. And again, we'll reemphasize these and I think explain to you how they apply throughout the process for both of the sites as well. So the first step really is just a disciplined practice of going through and understanding, identifying what the opportunities and constraints are related to the property. Typically those revolve around legal considerations, so zoning, for example, physical considerations, who are your neighbors? Is there access? Are the soil conditions good? How big is the property? And then ultimately, feasibility testing really pertains to what is the market telling us about what could be done at this point in time. So our initial step is looking at all of those things, trying to identify what uses are potentially available and trying to explore a little bit about, let's get out of the box a little bit. You have some pretty unique properties here, and unique and challenging. This step is really critical to just understanding, kind of level setting, what have we got here? What are the possibilities? And it really sets us up for the next step, which is let's start to model what those possibilities look like in terms of actually a potential outcome for you. And in this process, we show kind of this Venn diagram because it really is an iterative process where we're going to be engaging with you on a regular basis to say, for example, this zoning might be allowed for this property. And again, we'll get into more details, but just generally speaking, we want to run you through some different scenarios so you can say, okay, I understand the outcome of that is X, but the steps to get there are going to be long and difficult. And so we want to present to you both the risk and the reward of these different scenarios, and then work with you to decide, okay, what is your priority with regards to this? Is it maximizing the value of the property? Is it expediting a relatively quick closing? Those are two disparate, outcomes, and there's a way to blend those, but we'll work through this process with you, and that's really where I think we excel, is on the engagement side. We work with a lot of consensus building organizations where we have to both inform and educate our clients. And it really sets us up for the third step here well. Before we go out to the market, we're going to understand what's important to you. And that's going to show itself in the RFP process and who we target and ultimately how we implement this. You're going to have control. The market's going to understand what you're looking for, and it'll set us up for negotiations as well. One of the questions you asked is how we approach negotiation. We're very transparent. We'll work with your legal counsel. We'll manage business issues that reflect what your priorities are. They'll help with legal issues, and we'll work towards something that we think ultimately is going to reflect the outcome that you want, your mission. So those are really the three steps: identifying the feasible uses, testing those to try to understand what your mission is in light of those potential opportunities, and then going to market in a targeted, structured way that delivers the outcomes that you're expecting and that we all worked through.
One of the questions that we asked, and I think it kind of fits in this methodology section, one of the questions that we asked of the last firm was, what type of public engagement, and where in that process does it happen in your process, and how do you go about it, and what do you plan for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really up to you. We'll make some recommendations, and both sites may be a little bit different depending on what your outcomes are. But once we have an understanding for what the potential uses are for the property, typically we would come back to the decision-making body and start to talk about those. And then if you need us to go out to the larger community and kind of explain and educate them as well, we would do so. But, on a regular basis, we'll work with generally with the decision makers. But obviously, because you've got constituents that, want to understand what's happening, and particularly for the property that's downtown. And I don't mean to lessen the property that's in Harrison Township by any stretch, but, this one's obviously very germane to the residents. So I would see a process that engaged with them to let them know what we're finding, what we're seeing, what the opportunities are, what the constraints are, and really bringing them along educationally as well, so they can see each step of the way and they're not surprised by the outcome.
Can I add something too?
Of course.
And like Doug said, we don't necessarily know today exactly what that approach would be for community engagement, but I can kind of give you the gamut of stuff that we have done to give you examples of what that is. There's some properties where we really don't have to do a lot. A lot of it is just you talk to the neighbors a little bit, you talk to some folks that have been involved in it, and that's probably enough, and that's appropriate for that. That is the least amount of community engagement you could do, right? All the way to, we have fully planned and hosted full charrettes where you're bringing in the whole public body and you're running kind of a workshop, and we're leading the workshop and saying, hey, this is the property, what would you do here? And you're sharing and you're encouraging ideas of sharing, right? And you bring in a Jimmy John's platter and everyone's talking, and that's kind of the vibe of what you get. Then there's stuff in between where we know that there's probably a targeted audience that we want feedback on, and we should do that in a really thoughtful way, but we just don't necessarily need to bring or invite every single person to talk about this too. And so there's all these different ranges, and what Doug's kind of saying is some of those apply depending on where we get and some of the strategy piece of it, but we have experience doing all of them basically too.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Tori. Yeah. Any other questions about kind of methodology and approach? And again, we'll weave this through a discussion as to how we would approach each of the individual sites. Okay.
I feel like my question would be later.
Yeah.
Whatever works.
Sure, Commissioner?
No, I think that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, mine will be later, I think.
So the water plant site approach, really interesting property. So what I've identified here is basically the steps that we would foresee based on what we know today. And we don't know everything by any stretch, but obviously we know it's on the waterfront. We know it's in the township DDA. We know that it's master planned for village waterfront, which is, in reading through the zoning, a fairly complicated and prescriptive zoning that to some degree may or may not be viable. Obviously, that's part of the process we'll go through to try to understand that. And then there's some adjacent uses that are of interest and might cause us to start to ask, well, should we potentially acquire those? Would it add value overall to our disposition? So first step, understanding challenges and opportunities, like I said. Let's understand, explore what potential uses are, and identify those that are potentially feasible. Part of that process is understanding constraints early. As I mentioned, the zoning and political situation obviously drives potential value of the property. So we want to understand where does the DDA sit at this point? What are they thinking? What are they willing to do? We want to understand what the neighbors think as well. And as Tori mentioned, typically, we'll engage with the neighbors. In this case, I think that's going to be important, obviously, to try to understand what value potentially assembling some property might bring to this. We want to understand the demolition situation, the potential costs of that, in order to help you weigh whether or not to take that on or not. So we'll go through a process of seeing, hey, if it's going to cost $500,000 to demo this, but it's going to inure to your benefit in terms of ultimate value, we're going to take a look at that. Then moving really from there, we're going to get into what is feasible ultimately here, and running through those scenario options that I mentioned. Is a marina feasible? And, is the mixed use that is proposed by the DDA and by the township, is that feasible? And what does that look like in terms of ultimate value? And what does it look like in terms of risk to you and time? And we'll try to weigh those things and come to you and lay those scenarios out so that you can decide, how you'd like to proceed given those constraints and opportunities. So that's really the model and alignment piece that I'm displaying here, is looking at what values there are, helping you understand risk and reward, and then aligning with you on what your priorities are ultimately. All of that ultimately feeds into an RFP and RFQ process, informs that process, and we'll work with you through that and make sure that what we're delivering to the marketplace is reflective of what your desires are. And that helps us with the negotiation process as well. We're very clear with the community about what we're looking for, what we will and won't do. We'll get feedback on that and then go from there. Any questions about approach, or is there anything that you have a concern about and you want to know how we'll address? Okay. I've got just a sample here that I thought was relevant. This was a not-for-profit client of ours who owned a 10-acre parcel. It kind of demonstrates a little bit more the value of our process and how the process works. So this was interesting because it was a consensus-building organization for which about 150 people had actual ownership of this property and wanted to be involved in the decision-making process. They had elected a board to ultimately govern the decision-making, but fairly robust engagement process. So I met with them, basically all 150 of them, on a monthly basis as we started to gather information and educate them as to what the opportunities were for the disposition of the site. There was a fair amount of tension. There was a lot of emotion involved with the property itself. They also were utilizing a building on the property that was unfortunately falling apart. They needed to get out of it, and it was costing a fair amount of money to rent other space. So these push and pull on trying to maximize value, trying to do so quickly, and then exploring possibilities to make sure that the constituency, the owners, were all represented and had a voice. This process really exemplified all of those things. And ultimately, we got to a place where we had a number of offers on the table, some of which were basically cash closing fairly quickly, which a lot of the owners were interested in. But for a couple $1 million more, they could wait for entitlements and ultimately close in probably 12 to 14 months. So we weighed both of those things with them, and we were able to negotiate successfully to really bridge a gap between a number of the various constituents in terms of their concerns about moving quickly, getting the maximum amount of money. We structured the deal so that we had the entitlements expedited. We were able to get a lot of deposits over the course of time to assure that the developer was moving along in the process and spending money very deliberately. And the outcome was a balanced approach, really. We maximized proceeds. We expedited, ultimately, the delivery of those proceeds and negotiated in the process with the developer specific variances that they were allowed to go and pursue so that we kept control of what they were asking for, and we knew the time frame in which those things could happen and the likelihood of those things. So just a demonstration of an approach here recently, locally, that was successful. Any questions
Can I
about
ask you a
that?
question?
Sure.
What do you think the time frame would be for the waterfront property in Harrison from engagement to sign contract?
The signed contract? I would guess typically we would put the property on the market for 60 days. So I can put an offering memorandum together subject to your approval and going through this process. So I'm doing the math in my head as we chat here, but if we can run through this process and get you comfortable with the approach, I would say we could probably do that in 6 months. Ultimately, get the offering memorandum out. Typically, we want it out on the market for at least 60 days, and once we get responses back, we come back to you, pick someone, select someone. Probably take another 30 to 60 days to document it.
Okay.
So ultimately, you're looking at, you're starting to close in on a year, potentially.
That's about what this took too, right? This case study was about a year.
Yeah, this took about a year ultimately. Any other questions? Todd?
Thanks, Doug.
So moving on to this site, which I think is a really exciting site. I know there's a lot of exciting things going on downtown right now with your revitalization project. Where we're starting at, challenges and opportunities, is really just defining what the site is, what the city commission's interest in the site in terms of potential uses are, the level of control you want to exhibit over the process. Those have all been things that have been identified at the very outset that we're going to flesh out through this process. At the end, where we see this going is, again, a controlled developer solicitation, RFP, RFQ process, but it's also helping you with a development agreement that is instituting some controls over the process so that it's not just literally hanging a shingle, selling the piece of property and saying, we'll see you in 3 or 4 years. This site in particular, 4.6 acres, that's very advantageous for you. We know that your existing vision is 2 mixed use buildings, residential, market rate residential, with first floor retail. Public engagement is a very important part of this process, and I'll get into a little bit of our work with Royal Oak and how we accomplished a lot of that. And then the influence and control. So validating the vision, it's very similar to what Doug had said in terms of testing the market and making sure what you've already identified as a possible use makes market-driven sense. And I would say it's very important in this sense too, because the closer that the market aligns with what your projected use is, the more leverage that you have in terms of exhibiting development control over the project. So if you're taking a use that doesn't necessarily fit into here, you're going to have less developers that are interested in doing things, you may have to step forward and provide more incentivization that you may be prepared to do to try to launch one of those uses. So having that list of what we think is commercially viable for this site is really, really important, because it informs the level of control that you may have and the net that you can cast to bring developers in that can help execute that vision for you. Moving on there, and a lot of these steps are concurrent, but we're, again, looking at the land, we're looking at different viability scenarios with retail, with resi, whether multi-use or single use makes sense for the site. We'll be working with the city administration in terms of, are there incentives available at the local level? We already have an incentives team that really understands the playing field at the county, state, and federal levels. But there may be things that you can do at the local level that we're not yet aware of. Understanding the return on investment for developers. They're not altruistic. They are looking to get something out of the deal, and understanding what a reasonable rate of return of that, again, provides leverage. And that's some of the market-driven data that we bring to the table that you may not necessarily have here. What is a reasonable return of investment on a residential project versus, a regular commercial retail project? And then taking in the zoning concerns with the project. We know this is multi-use. I think you have a 4-story cap right now. If there was a desire from the city commission to have a project outside of that, then we would obviously have to have a path forward with the planning commission or the zoning board in order to make sure that a projected use is actually legally permissible on that site. And again, we're using all of this data again to inform what a development agreement would look like. The community integrated process, it is literally what is the degree that you want. And I look at this all over in terms of, you had said, how do you envision working with the city? Well, when we have, and we work on a lot of government projects, I almost exclusively work on government projects. We have engagement with the city manager and his office in terms of how that engagement is going and how those check-ins are going. We have a cadence with the elected officials. Do you want a monthly report that we can provide, just giving you a status check of where we're at, that is a receive and file, but when we actually have actionable information that we need you to make decisions on, then we're here in a public body. Community engagement. We first have to identify who the stakeholders are. Residents, businesses, if there are any other outside interests or developers, let's say, that you want to make sure that are aware of this project. How do we do that? And then, again, the level of degree. A lot of work that we'll be doing at the very, very outset is trying to determine really kind of the game board that we're playing with. Before we start integrating, the different pieces. But ultimately, from those levels of community engagement, and we've done everything from surveys to, day-long charrettes to just visioning with the community and what you want to see there, we'll compile a list of what we think are commonalities or segmented between business versus residents versus any other stakeholders that you've asked us to engage with in order to understand what a wish list is, what the community desires, any potential benefits that may be in play, again, provided we think uses match up and you might have the leverage to be able to do, a project like this. So I'm gonna jump into Royal Oak. That is Royal Oak circa 2014. And the project I'm gonna describe went from 2014 to about 2021. And that's not designed to terrify you that this is a 7-year engagement that we're talking about here. There were a lot of moving parts in the city of Royal Oak, and you've already actually made a decision on one of those outstanding issues was, if you're vacating the site, where are you going? You've already made that decision, and so that cuts 3 years off of this process. But this is the city of Royal Oak today. You'll see that essentially you had a sea of parking that has now been replaced by buildings and activated green space downtown. And I'll be able to identify a little bit more about how this project happened. I'm not going to talk about all 7 years of what happened here, but I'm going to highlight the points that I think are relevant for the city of Mount Clemens and what you're trying to do with this site. And essentially, the city of Royal Oak had a long community engagement process with both residents and businesses, trying to determine why they were losing foot traffic in the city. And a lot of that was driven by economics, and people were finding different places to go to live, work, play, to use that economic development cliche. And so there was an idea that we need to attract more office use into the area. And Royal Oak was not known as an office town at that time. And there was a goal set of about 180,000 square foot of new Class A office space that they wanted by 2020, which nobody knew that 2020 was going to be a very interesting date, especially when you relate it to office space.
No kidding.
And that, exactly. Sometimes, you know, you can't predict all of these things, but you know, a lot of what we do and a lot of why Plant Moran was brought in to help with the city is how do we mitigate risk, and ultimately the use of the building that went up didn't become an office building. It became the Henry Ford Medical Center, which actually still serves that same goal of bringing foot traffic into the city, both employees and visitors. But you had Site A and Site B. Those are two. There's a parking structure there, and that's where the Henry Ford building there. Those were surface parking lots. And C, which is a new 2-acre park downtown, that's where the city's assets were, both City Hall and the police station, which were interconnected. And so in order to develop on A and B, you were going to have to relocate the city. And a developer came to the city and said, we've got a great idea. We can build you a new 140,000 square foot office tower. You'll be a tenant in it. So we check that box in terms of where you are going. We'll need to buy or build another police station. We can't fit that into the building. You're going to be able to check the box on your economic development goal of bringing in new office use, new workers into the city. We can now activate a new green space in the city. And we'll do that all for a 20% development fee. And you'll pay rent. And at 30 years, you can own this free and clear. That sounded great. And I'll be honest, I was on the city side, and I like to think of myself as semi-intelligent. I'm a real estate attorney by background. I had no idea, like, does 20% make sense? 30 years, does that make sense? So we brought Plant Moran in to essentially vet this deal and figure out, you know, what is a reasonable rate of return for the developer. I think they wanted 14%, and we, at the end of the day, knocked it down to 7%, which I think was generous then. The developer had a vested interest in getting the project done, and so we used the negotiating power of the firm to you know, try to exercise whatever capital control that we could over the project. Ultimately, the decision was, you know, Plant Moran, can you assist us with trying to figure out what are our options in terms of if the city were to take control of the project? And it was about 6 months of analysis that ended up showing that you were actually going to save a lot more money by building new, by not paying rent, by maintaining control over the project, by knowing that you know who your neighbors are. And it was actually a fairly easy decision to make. What we didn't really understand on the commercial side was it blew a hole in the developer's pro forma, that you suddenly lost a 30-year creditworthy tenant, and now you had a purely speculative office building in a non-office town. And so the next step was, how can we actually achieve our goals, which is taking the project over? And so we have this train on this track of determining what the city space needs are, what our future space needs are, how can we unlock assets, how can we actually, what was just a sea of parking, how can we actually transform that into a municipal central gathering place downtown? And then how can we bring in the developer and get this building off and running? And essentially, we looked at, you know, we had leverage because we were going to incentivize upfront how that building was financed. And then it's, okay, that's not typically what a city does. How do we mitigate risk to the extent possible with that? And it was meeting with the developer's lender at the time, and meeting with their attorneys and coming up with a payback mechanism that ultimately turned out to be successful, which was, we're never going to give a developer money. What we will do is, we'll hold it in escrow with the lender. And then once the developer has exhausted all of their equity and capital, it'll trigger ours that is going in. And at that point, the construction loan, once the city's equity is, at this point it was cash. Once that is exhausted, it'll actually trigger the construction loan. So there's no real reason why that building wouldn't be built. That was important for, it has to be built. How do we recoup our investment for a very untraditional, investment structure that the city is making into a private project? Well, we worked and this was entirely Plant Moran's IP that they came to the table with and said, we're going to come up with a payback schedule. And ultimately the incentive with land was used sold for $1. So that in and of itself is an incentive. With the amount of money put into the project, you had $6.4 million roughly. So you're going to set up payment obligations. So by year 8, you had to fulfill half of that. By year 12, you had to fulfill all of that in taxable revenue. At each step, if you didn't, the developer is cutting you a check. We've got that memorialized in a development agreement, and then we solicited personal guarantees of the entire development team to make sure that that happened. By year 15, I believe it was up to $18 million, and by year 20, you needed to double that investment. So essentially, we looked at both what is a reasonable rate of return for the developer, and what is a reasonable rate of return for the city for them stepping forward and doing that. And I'm pleased to report that the project was a success. The Henry Ford building is there right now, and the last, when I had checked in with my old Royal Oak friends, they made their first payment payback obligation 3 years early. So that in and of itself is a success, but that in and of itself was about a 6-month negotiation process with a developer to get to a point where we were all exacting concessions, and we were literally a public-private partnership where we were going to succeed or fail together. And I think that that's generally how most public-private partnerships should work. So again, our outcomes, $234 million economic impact. I want to focus more on, yes, the PMR helped the city realize savings on their project, but activation of the new 2-acre Central Park, that was very important because it was the last element that was built, but it was the one that we had the most community engagement with. Literally every month or any special event in the city, you had a charrette or you had an informational booth explaining what was going on. And that was a park that was literally designed by the residents and businesses in Royal Oak. That you could have a passive park that everybody could enjoy Monday through Friday. If you wanted to have a little bit more activity in terms of events and music and concerts, you would be able to do that there. As I said, that the project did take, 5 or 6 years of really, brain crunching due diligence in terms of how these projects work. We actually used an existing committee that the city had, and we've done this with other cities in terms of having, 3 commissioners that are sitting on a particular committee to be there to give direction, not necessarily make decisions, but give input that you've entrusted them with in terms of this is a direction, you're going in the right way, keep going here, so that you're not losing momentum. That can be sometimes a challenge with government as you lose momentum because there's a lot of time in between meetings and when decisions are being made, and some of these things you really want to move as quickly as possible. We did monthly updates that were on a dashboard for the website. We work with a lot of clients right now where we will handle engagement in terms of our website and the marketing materials. If you provide content, we do that too. And then moving into, what is the proper cadence for bringing the public in for updates? And we would do quarterly updates, usually devoting an entire city commission meeting just for that. We tailor it specifically for our different client engagements. And this one, as I said, I think at the very beginning is going to be a lot of homework and due diligence on our end, and then bringing preliminary findings to the right body to discuss. And then at what point do you want to take these, and essentially you're testing the market not with the development community, but with the community as itself. So I will pause there because I know you're hangry and I know we're getting ready to close on our end. But if there are any questions about this case study, I'd love to answer them.
So when did you finish all this?
So the original construction close date was 2020, and then there was a freeze on construction. The Henry Ford building actually came up pre-COVID, but wasn't operational until after COVID by nature of what it was. Actually, the first element that came up was a parking structure in 2018, because when you're taking parking offline in a dense downtown like that, it's not a very good economic development play that you're trying to build buildings to bring more people in, but you actually killed the town doing it. So the parking structure is very, very important in terms of replacing all of that stuff. But City Hall opened in 2020 of August. I remember I was the only one in the building wearing a K95. Good memories. And then the police station was the last to open in 2021, at the end of 2021. So that site, actually the park opened a year later in 2022 with the planting, so.
It's very March of 2020. We had your former.
Mr. Johnson.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I always remember one of his comments was when we were talking about a parking lot in the city was, be very careful about parking. Parking is a very important part. Remember, he said
how much per parking space was
Yes.
the parking structure? And
Yes.
he obviously lived through this.
He did live through it, but he didn't live to complete it. I did.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, any other questions? He's right though. Parking is, especially in an area like Mount Clemens, it is very important. And people have certain expectations about how far they can walk to certain places, and
sure.
always those elements in thriving downtown environments are top of mind for us.
Are you asking for questions overall right now, or just questions about the Royal Oak?
We're going to, I'm going to turn it over to our esteemed partner, Tori Mannix, to close it, but we're ready for questions of any and all sorts on this as well, so.
Bring them on. Yeah, we're ready. But first, interns, would you hire us? Just kidding.
Were you able to share any information about your fee structure?
Sure.
What we should expect?
Yeah, so we thought about this a lot, and the thing about these projects, there's alignment and a little bit of how you approach them, but they're two very different projects, really, at the end of the day. And even how I think we would go to market and even study some of these, they're very different too. And so I put on this slide, and I know that it's very vague, flexible compensation structures to fit your needs, but we really mean that. And what we were talking about a lot is what we don't like to do, especially as a lead on consulting, is say, we're just going to do this so that we can get a transaction fee on the back end, because that doesn't necessarily align with how we think we should execute a project too. So we like to talk about this in phases in terms of how we approach fee. So typically what we would do, and again, I am running probably 30 different projects right now, all with different fee structures, because a lot of you have different needs and you have different amounts that you want to pay at certain times. And we like to talk about that before we throw out numbers. But typically what we would do is, with the upfront strategy and approach piece, we would do kind of a time and materials fixed fee type approach for both of these sites. And what that gets to is basically we are all very aligned on what the playbook is for us to move forward and actually move into that strategy and execution piece. So we're aligned that we all want to basically understand the city's mission, vision, how you guys want to approach that. You understand all the risks, you understand the different outcomes, and we're not pushing you towards a certain transaction. We're not pushing you to do anything on the back end. Usually we would stop there and say, okay, we've performed this work. One, are you happy with our work? Do you like the work? Do you like working with us on some of this stuff? Two is, if we all agree on the playbook, now let's talk about the right way to compensate us for the back end piece of this too. So I say flexible to meet your needs, because it really is. And what we would like to do in the next step, if you would like to work with us on these, is really kind of define what that is. And even think about things like, with other projects we've done, we've said, for the highest and best use strategy piece, let's say we're going to do time and materials, and then when we really get into the execution, we go to market, we launch this, we'll do like a stair step basically, where when we get to a development agreement, there's a certain fee that we pay so that we're successful alongside with you. When the developer actually closes on the property or does a joint venture or a ground lease with you all, whatever it ends up being, we get another piece of our compensation, so we're aligned along the way. In the past, we've also even been able to talk to a developer about compensating us for part of our fee as part of the closing as well. So there's things you can do to be strategic so that's not all on your books as well, which is why we like to kind of work through it as we're going through. Sorry, that was a very long answer, but I wanted to make sure we were thorough.
But there will be some ballpark or guidelines or something.
Absolutely.
The materials is pretty open-ended.
What we would like to do is really walk through and make sure everyone agrees with the scope and our approach. So some of today is, do you like our approach? Do you like what we're doing and how we phase some of this? And then we'll provide you an estimate for some of these upfront fees and what the phase 2 could look like, so you get a sense of what that is too. Particularly if we're going to say, we'll charge you this, but we'll credit this back in phase 2 as an example too.
And this is for both properties?
For both properties, yeah. We'll do that. We'll do them separately, and then we'll talk about, if we're hired to perform both services, what that looks like too, in terms of operational savings for you guys.
All right. I think they covered your question, didn't they?
I do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was governmental incentives and things of nature. So you covered it. Does anybody else have any further questions? It's a lot to digest.
It's a lot. Thank you for letting us talk about some of these projects. As you can tell, we really like to work on these pieces. We're fortunate to be at a firm that allows us to all work together on these projects too. And you have two very different sites with different approaches, and we're excited to kind of approach them in different ways as well.
Well, we appreciate that you came in, and what we suggested at the end of the last presentation is, I think as everyone goes home and reads through the more of the material again and kind of looks at it further, that we, if individual commissioners have questions, they're going to send them to Greg, which then Greg will contact you. That way, we're not having you talking to 7 different people, and also that way, the commission, when you get the information back to Greg, he'll distribute it to all of us so that the commission gets the benefit. Everybody gets the same information.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, thank you again. We really appreciate the work and the time that it took to bring your whole team here, and all of the presentation itself. It was really comprehensive, and we're very excited about these opportunities, obviously, for very different reasons on both. Like you said, they're really different projects, but we're excited that Mount Clemens is getting this opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you everyone for having us. We very much appreciate it. So
Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And try to stay cool out there.
It's still very hot.
Yeah. Hotter tomorrow.
Maybe take your interns out for something to eat.
Yeah.
Lots of options in downtown Mount Clemens.
Yeah,
just saying.
Jason's got the down low.
There's some good ones.
Thank you again.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, you guys. Thanks so much. So we've got obviously 2 proposals, a lot of information to look over. I imagine that as we look it over, but I don't want to give too much. I mean, I think we need some, obviously we're not voting on anything tonight. It's a work session. But what is the commission's will of next steps and all that, to give Greg some marching orders or
Well, I think
guide to, yeah, go ahead.
we're perhaps all interested enough to hear them give us more information about what the fee structure might look like. I feel like that's a big missing piece of information for us to blindly move forward. But certainly we like what they presented, and I, for one, would like more information about how they would price
Did
that
anyone
out.
have any really strong feelings with one or the other? Like one, did you hate one and loved the other? I mean,
I do, but I want to make sure I understand, because I don't think I fully understand why we bundled it, so that we would want the same firm to do both projects. You were explaining that a little bit, but I need to understand that better.
Well, they're both complicated, I think, and like I said, in a different way. And then bundling should be a cost savings. I mean, anytime a firm's going to take on 2 projects versus 1, they should pass that savings, on to us. So
Are we
could-
assured of that it is a cost saving? Do we know that?
I think that's
for
a
fact?
negotiable piece.
It's a negotiable piece.
That's what, and actually, I believe that Plant Moran alluded to that. Real Point alluded to that before when they were here before. That
And she
we had
just
some
said
opportunities, right?
A credit back on the second project.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I was a little bit disappointed that Plant Moran didn't come in with some more figures, that they were just like, we're really flexible. I'm like, yeah, that's great, but I just heard numbers from the other people, and I need to know if you're in the ballpark, right? Or if you're, right? I mean, I think that's just natural, right?
You need to be able to compare apples and apples.
Right, like if I'm buying an e-bike, like,
I feel like
was
maybe
that
they
like
just
saying
ran out of time.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, I
and
guess.
put a lot of time into a lot of other things, which was interesting hearing about Royal Oak, but I would want to know more specifics about the project here in Mount Clemens.
Sure, yeah.
I think both firms are fully capable of doing both projects. There's no question. I mean, you're talking to 2 major firms that do
Experience.
this, and they all have the experience. I think CBRE is bigger, and they are more on a national basis. But so to me, it really does come down to
money,
cost. What is this going to cost us? I think both can execute.
So maybe that could
for
be
them not to
something.
include anything.
like I say, it was question 11 was fee structures, right? And
Well, on the first,
I didn't think CBRE's was that bad.
when I read the first Real Point proposal, which was just on the waterfront property, it had a fee. It had a fixed fee of $35,000 and a marketing and sales 5% fee of the sale price.
Right.
So they did give us a fee at one point. Now that sounds a lot cheaper than what the CBRE would be. if it
CBRE
was-
on the waterfront was 5%, 6% of 2 brokers, but no consultant.
it didn't have the monthly retainer.
The monthly
Okay.
retainer was for
Okay.
The other one.
this building.
Was this one?
property.
Okay. Okay. And
Which,
that was
if you
the one.
multiply it, that's what I wanted to figure out. If that 10,000 a month times
10 months or 18?
16,
Well,
18?
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But then if you're going to get,
Yeah.
you think
50%.
what you can sell this property for.
But we don't know.
We have to do some math here. We
Right.
have to do some examples to say, okay, if we can get, it might be cheaper than 5%,
Yeah.
But I have to figure that out. But I thought it was a big missing piece for Plant Moran to walk in here with no fees.
Yeah, and to say we're flexible, I'm just
Yeah.
like, okay, well, that doesn't really tell me anything, right? Like,
Time of
Yeah.
materials is bottomless pit. And,
Right.
I can
and
tell you that
what-
just for me too, if working with one firm is a lot easier than working with 2 different firms for 2 simultaneous projects as well, and hopefully we'd see a cost savings by bundling. I mean, we should.
Yeah, for the ease of our
So-
staff, that would. You're right, Greg. I mean, that. you
Wouldn't
guys-
either one of these firms be able to give us some idea of what we might be able to get for either property?
I mean, you could ask for that up front. You could say, hey, I want to start with an appraisal, right? But we can talk about what this property's, let's just take the riverfront. You can say this property as it sits is worth X, but that's X if you're going to put a sign on it and just sell it to somebody. And then you have no stake in the game. If you
Right.
want a stake in that game,
Right, you're gonna
then
take.
that's where this whole consulting piece and the whole expertise comes in,
Which.
right? Because you want to direct the narrative to what happens here.
Yeah.
Completely agree with that, but hoping that they have more knowledge than me and could say it might be somewhere in this range of.
But the market is so volatile. The market right now is so volatile. I wonder if they would even want to do it that way as opposed to just put the feelers out there and see.
I'm sure they
What
don't want to put
people-
that in writing. I guess I was just
Well-
trying to get some idea.
I also think that they don't really know, because we don't really know what we want out of this property.
Right.
I mean, we don't
Right.
we don't know if we want a park. We don't know if we want a marina. We don't know if we want to. I mean, and I think from everything I've heard with any engagement in the public, they what to say.
I was going to say,
You
we
know?
haven't even talked to the public yet.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why my questions have been the public engagement piece too, because I think those pieces, I mean, obviously we all agree that some of it has to be revenue generating, right? We owe that to the
Right.
public because some of it has to be that we have tax dollars that come from it, right? Or if not, then we just hold on to it.
As well.
Right. I mean, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it has to make some money for the citizens. So, you know, but again, so I think it's not like you're selling a house, like you were saying, right? I mean, so.
Yeah. But once we do, to your point, once we know a little bit more definitively what we want there, then we can also do the comparables ourselves. I mean, say if it's a restaurant or a boutique hotel, you can kind of get an idea as to where it might fall.
Our staff isn't experts at that. That's what I'm saying. I think that's why they're key to it is, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what they're saying is that's exactly what they do. And they can help us as a 7-member governing body come to also some consensus with what do we want, right? Like that's what they're good at.
If we saw
I think that's going to be so difficult.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So,
that's
I
going to
mean-
be time consuming and difficult.
Well, I think that's where the highest and best use analysis comes into play. You say, I want the top 3 or 5, and then they go through and tell you why. And then that kind of, and maybe it's what you were thinking.
Right.
Maybe it's a little different, but they explain that to you and why it's a benefit to the community. And, you know, and
that's why you're saying like in Royal Oak where, you know, they ended up selling the property for $1, but they ended up getting payments back within that development over time and all, you know, they had a building agreement. And I mean, so it's very creative, not just an absolute sale, right? Like putting like you were saying, put the sign up and sell it and be done, you know, I mean, so we don't have that kind of economic development savvy or partnership in terms of, and I think that's what these people are, that's what you're paying for, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, oddly enough, I'm not concerned about them not giving us definitive fees. And, you know, because I feel like there was enough practicality that I heard that I know they're going to come in somewhere that's not going to be ridiculous, you know, in terms of what they're going to charge us. But there seems to be a lot of focus on flexibility with Plant Moran and also maybe even give and take in negotiation. I thought that's what I heard a little bit of. Negotiation is a good thing. I feel that our first presenters, what are they, CBRE?
Yep.
I can never remember. I mean, come on, premier in the whole world. We know they're fully capable of this project, fully capable. To me, that's a no-brainer. If we vetted them from now until Thanksgiving, we wouldn't find anything that would say, oh, no, we better not. However, I think because of that, you have to look at other variables besides competency and ability and reputation. And something about Plant Moran, to me, is just a little homespun for Mount Clemens, and it just seems like a better fit. That's just my gut right now. I don't know once I do more research, but my gut is that there's a lot of municipal experience there. There's a lot of public experience there, and I like that. I also, you know, being a communicator by profession, for some reason, I could understand what they were telling us a lot better. Maybe it wasn't presented as rapidly. It just came across less jargon, less acronyms that I didn't know the meaning of.
Yeah,
Like,
I think they felt as though our level of expertise, CBRE thought our level of expertise was a little higher, I think, than what the mainstream commission, right, like what we had.
Because, you know, to your point, when you asked what was P3, that was on my list, and also PUD and a few other Ps. So anyway, it's just, I don't know. I just think, again, other things come into play like accessibility, communication, you know, those kinds of things are what I'm thinking about with Plant Moran. So I'm kind of leaning
If you
a little
ask
bit.
any of our communities around us, they've all used Plant Moran Real Point. I mean, I mean, everyone's used them for something along the way.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're very Macomb County. you know, I mean, which is
I've heard that
in
name.
Oakland and Wayne.
Yeah,
I
I've
mean,
seen them.
SEMCOG's used
Yeah.
them. I mean, you know, they're very. You're
Local.
right. Yeah.
This is what
CBRE. I mean, I was in
school
West Palm.
districts and the
There's
different-
CBRE signs everywhere. I mean, it's it's everywhere. They're everywhere. They are
They
like you
don't
said.
win.
They could do it. So could Plant Moran. Right.
When we did the County Board building.
Oh, CBRE. Yeah, yeah. I think I would really I think that maybe Greg getting some fee structure information for us.
Yeah,
I think
really
that's
think that
important.
is important. I think
Yeah.
it has to be boundary.
We need some clarification. Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
I-
if we asked for it, we're supposed to get it.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
we would look silly not to come back.
Yeah,
You missed
right.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah.
What did you make that decision
Right.
on?
Yeah, I feel like so. Yeah. Eric, go ahead.
Something that I would also like, first something I'd like to say, I feel like I got a better feeling for how community engagement would work and the outcome from Plant Moran. And I would be curious to hear a little more feedback from CBRE on how much more or how they would be able to approach it. Like they both said, okay, we'll do charrettes. Okay, got it. But I didn't get much of an idea of what the outcome of those charrettes were. It felt noticeably different. It felt more like we're giving information to the community, not necessarily seeking input from the community.
I felt the opposite.
Me
I
too.
thought,
Was that-
I thought Plant
Yeah.
Moran felt that way, and CBRE was like, "Well, we'll take surveys and we'll do this." You know,
Yeah.
like we're.
Yeah.
I felt like they were actually more specific about
Okay.
getting that feedback and doing something with it than giving feedback.
Yeah, they would
Yeah.
educate the
Okay.
public.
Yes,
I felt
yeah.
that
Plant
way.
Moran was more.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
We want
Because the-
input
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
You're right.
They
You're right.
emphasized over and over how it fails if you don't get that.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
what
that I
said
did enjoy that with CBRE actually, and I
Okay, yep,
know
yep,
I made
you're
a
right.
note of it
You're right.
too.
about it.
Yeah.
About how it's really important. It's early and it's
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of felt
They
like
get that. They
Yeah.
do get the importance that they.
and I think it will just fall on us to make sure if we went with Plant Moran, we would obviously just dictate that, right?
Yeah.
Because it seems like they're fully capable, and
Yeah.
like they said, they also mentioned charrettes and all that. Whichever. Now I'm gonna go look up what charrette is.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were saying.
Because I'm like, do you mean a town hall?
I almost said.
Is that a fancy developer speak?
That's the
Seriously.
trendy word, shreds.
Charrette.
Shreds.
At first, I was like, "Are we playing charades?" Like, I don't know.
But it is reassuring that we've got two
Yeah.
completely qualified options. That's good. It's just a question of which one's going to get us not just the highest and best use, but the best fit
Right.
for especially for this site. And then which one is not like. I'm less concerned about the waterfront as far as the long term, but I don't want it to end up being something where we're going to be like looked at as terrible neighbors for
Oh, you mean Harrison?
selling it to a data center or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Um,
yeah. Right. Exactly.
But for the city hall one, I mean, for me, that's my top priority is going to be making sure that it is a practical development that also is embraced by the city and its residents,
Right.
not just maximize the dollars and that's all.
Right.
Obviously.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's where on that waterfront one, it seems in some respect or some way, we could partner with Harrison and maybe Harrison would have some input on, share some of this because they have a vested interest in getting what they want there, right?
If we open and I will tell you this, if we said, and Greg, you can tell me if I'm wrong, if we said to Harrison, if we said to the county, I mean, there are a lot of people who have some ideas about that property because they keep trying to talk to us. I'm sure they've reached out to you. No, okay. Well,
No.
But they've tried to
Nobody
talk to
calls
us
me.
like, oh, well, I mean, they have some real interests.
We'll come to the table and
Well, I think that once we enlist someone, that's exactly what's going to start coming out of the woodwork. Like, oh, well, because they have, they've done this hotel study, they've done this convention center study, they've done a peer study, they've all done tons of studies. And if you notice, how they talked about land acquisition around that site. I mean, there's 2 trailer parks, south and north,
Yeah.
around that site that are for sale.
Yeah. Who are your neighbors?
Yeah,
Right.
it seems like
They're
it
for
would
sale.
only help us
Right.
to brainstorm with others or bring others on board early
Yes.
engagement.
And that's why, like, Plant Moran has all the, I mean, you saw how many county projects they've done,
Oh.
you know, I mean, and so, they would have the access of those studies from the county. I think, heck, they didn't do the hotel study, but I mean,
No,
all
they
that is stuff that it would behoove the county to cooperate with that,
Harrison
right? I mean,
Township.
and Harrison.
Well, listen,
Harrison.
Harrison Township is more than ready to sit down when
Yeah.
it's time.
Yeah.
I've talked to Ken several times, and so I think he's going to be good to work with. And what's good for them is good for us. Like we talk about that
Yeah.
outside of the sale. I've talked to Ken about that. You know, we believe that whatever's good for Mount Clemens is good for Harrison.
Yeah.
Whatever's good for Harrison is good for Mount Clemens. So
I mean, we need a hotel.
Badly.
Yeah, I mean, we need a hotel.
I was
that has-
surprised too
so-
when they talked about putting a hotel on this property.
Oh yeah, I've never really.
No,
Yeah.
It made me think
Which-
a little
yeah,
boutique,
it did. It
Yeah.
boutique
It-
hotel.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
With a
Because
restaurant.
there is,
I mean,
yeah.
we don't need a
Wouldn't that be
convention center
amazing?
there.
No.
No, but yeah,
We have
boutique
City
hotel and
Hall,
a
which has
restaurant.
a lot of room.
Yeah, 'cause there is nothing.
It's gonna be fun to dream. It's gonna be fun to dream. So, well, all right. So you're gonna get some information from Plant Moran, especially,
Thank you.
and we're gonna. I think we kind of. Did you have some good? What do you need?
I need you to, number one, take your time. This doesn't have to happen by tomorrow. Look this over, send your questions to me. I will reach out to Plant Moran, and that will be
Step
not
one.
just asking, that will be a negotiation. That's
Yeah. Right.
right. We'll see
Yeah.
exactly what we can get this for.
What kind of time frame though do you want the questions by? I think we should let's do that, right? Give somebody
I
some
mean, how much time do you think you need? Like
Week?
within the next 1 to 2 weeks would.
2
Plenty of
weeks.
time.
2 weeks.
A week.
Yeah.
Then
No
Okay.
more than a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gets to be
All right. So by the next commission meeting,
Yeah.
Monday.
That's
Monday.
Monday.
Next Monday, right? Next Monday.
I may not be at that one, so.
Is Commissioner Calhoun going to get his packet? What will we call
Well,
him?
he said he was going to watch.
He was gonna view
Okay.
and then he'd have his questions.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think
Okay.
that should give him some time. And
Yeah.
if if you're struggling with that, then just shoot us an email and
I want to see
We
get
can-
his stuff. Okay.
But I go with what Eric said. It's what I was thinking. I think we're pretty fortunate to have 2 firms of this caliber. And
Yes.
what I would say is enjoy this. This is it's amazing time right now. And enjoy it. I mean, honestly.
yeah, we get to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
friends,
exciting.
I'm hungry.
And everybody's on.
How do we end this meeting here?
So I think we covered city business on that one. And is there any other commissioner comments?
No.
Commissioner McGarry speaking for all of us. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
And support.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good night, everybody.
Good
Thanks so
night.
much.